Hi guys, so the Minister of State for Europe and North America, James Cleverly, spoke at the Northern Ireland Protocol Committee, which took questions from a number of members of the House of Lords. Now, Lord Thomas challenged the Minister on how much control the DUP has over the British government by their refusal to respect their electoral results from a few weeks ago and form an executive. James Cleverly here demonstrated his lack of understanding of both the Protocol and the Good Friday Agreement.
Yes, the fact that the DUP won't play ball and play their part under the Belfast Good Friday Agreement does not mean that the protocol is inconsistent with the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. I just want to know what obligations are breached in that agreement by the protocol. I can't find any.
I'm a politician rather than a lawyer, and the thing that strikes me is the executive is not up and running, and my understanding, and as I say, I'm very, very conscious there are people who are much more deeply involved in this and have been for many, many decades, longer than I have. But ultimately, for me, it strikes that the philosophy that underpinned the Good Friday Agreement is the consent of both communities, and at the moment we don't have that.
No, the problem with the consent issue is not with the Good Friday Agreement, it's with the protocol. Now the issue of consent does not come in with the protocol. It's not a requirement of the protocol because, well, it's part of Brexit. It's part of the withdrawal agreement, and the issue of consent was not raised during Brexit. The people of Northern Ireland were not consented. A majority of people in Northern Ireland voted to remain in the European Union. They were not consented after that. They were not consented when it came to the writing of the withdrawal agreement. The people of Northern Ireland had no input there. So when we talk about the issue of consent, we're talking about the Good Friday Agreement, not the protocol.
And so for me, we need to take actions to resolve that. The DUP have not put forward nominations for roles as part of the power sharing executive. And as I say, if that circumstance was to endure, I don't think we could credibly say that the principles of the Good Friday Agreement were being discharged or displayed in Northern Ireland.
So you kowtow to the DUP in order to get them back into an executive?
I think it's a very, very unhelpful way of phrasing it.
But it's true. It may be unhelpful, but it's true. I've said before, just after the election, when the DUP said, we're not going into government with Sinn Féin, we're not going to form an executive. There's a cost of living crisis, we don't give a crap about that. We want our protocol gone. Now, I said at the time, what the UK government should do is have a meeting behind closed doors or whatever with the DUP and say, okay, you can have it the easy way or you can have it the hard way. The easy way is you go in to form a government with Sinn Féin and move on from this rubbish. The hard way is we take power back to Westminster and we issue a load of laws that you would not be very happy with. Language laws, laws on abortion, things like that. That's what we're going to do. And I would play very hard ball with the DUP over this. The DUP can be given a choice. Do you want it the easy way or do you want it the hard way? But instead, it seems the UK government is doing what the DUP want, trying to amend the protocol that they signed just 3 years ago.
If you don't mind me saying, I think that politicians listening to voters is not kowtowing. It is the golden thread that binds politicians to the people that they vote for.
And
Yes, and you're just about to get to the majority of voters supported parties that want the protocol implemented.
The majority in Northern Ireland in the recent election voted for the protocol.
But the Good Friday Agreement is never about the minority being silenced by the majority. It's my understanding.
But it's not about the Good Friday Agreement. He's talking about the protocol here. A majority support the protocol. The protocol and the Good Friday Agreement are two separate things. Now, the protocol is there to protect the single market and avoid a border on the island of Ireland, which is part of the Good Friday Agreement. So the protocol exists because of the Good Friday Agreement. But they're two separate things. And the issue of consent is part of the Good Friday Agreement, not part of the protocol.
At its heart, it is about making sure that both the minority view and the majority view have a voice. I would be very, very uncomfortable.
No. It's not. The protocol is not about minority views or majority views. There will eventually be a vote on the protocol, 2024. And the Northern Ireland Assembly will have a vote, and if a simple majority or a supermajority vote to maintain it, it will be maintained. It will not be renegotiated or anything like that.
If we suggested that it would be fine now for a minority voice, if that were the case, to be silenced by the majority voice. That is not how it works under the Good Friday Agreement, so in my understanding.
You would break an international treaty in order to appease a minority view in Northern Ireland, is that right?
Addressing the concerns of minority voices in Northern Ireland goes to the heart of the Good Friday Agreement.
But we're not talking about the Good Friday Agreement here. We're talking about the protocol. The DUP, which has to be clarified and it seems to be forgotten by a lot of people, the DUP were against the Good Friday Agreement back in 1998. Okay, they were against it. Now the DUP are saying, well, we need to protect the Good Friday Agreement, or the Belfast Agreement as they call it. Same thing. Consent needs to be respected. And they also say, well, when it comes to the protocol, the unionist community are not being consented. But nobody was consented when it came to Brexit, the mother of the protocol. So what the DUP are doing here is they're claiming that consent is important when it comes to the protocol, consent is important when it comes to the Good Friday Agreement, but when it comes to Brexit, no, consent is not important. I said this before. Can you imagine if Sinn Féin had refused, back in 2016 or just after 2016, if Sinn Féin had said, we're not going to form an executive because of Brexit. Unless Brexit is undone, we're not going to form an executive. What do you think the British government would have done in that situation?
If we were to suggest, or if you were to suggest, we were to say, actually, you know what? The principles underpinning the Good Friday Agreement are no longer valid. That we have that we scrap a power sharing executive, and that the party that gets the majority vote takes all the executive positions. And I know that is a pattern which exists in many other political systems, including Westminster. But
you're talking about hypotheticals here. This does not exist in Northern Ireland. In Northern Ireland, you have to have the executive is a consequence of the Good Friday Agreement, of the peace process. So he's trying to say, well, if there wasn't a peace process, if there wasn't a Good Friday Agreement, what's the point in talking about that? Because that's not the reality.
Political system. It is not how Northern Ireland politics is envisaged under the Good Friday Agreement. When in the past other political parties have not put forward names for the power sharing executive, we listened to their concerns and we took action to take their concerns. Just yesterday, a piece of legislation was introduced by my good friend Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, addressing specific concerns of the Republican community as put forward by Sinn Féin.
But that's the Northern Ireland Secretary of State. That's nothing to do with the protocol. Does James Cleverly... I understand, I acknowledge, and I think it's been honest of him at the beginning to say that he's not an expert on this. But maybe he shouldn't actually answer any questions on it, because I don't think he has a working understanding of the protocol or the Good Friday Agreement. It's better just to say, look, I put my hands up here. I know nothing about these things. It'd be less embarrassing. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.